Barfield's trial began on the 27th of November. A week later, she was found guilty, sentenced to death, and taken to jail to await her fate. During the lengthy appeals process, she became a born-again Christian.
I have a lot of care. I'm sensitive to people's needs. I just love to reach out and try to help somebody because I know what it is to hurt.
Barfield attracted the attention of an active support group who claimed it was her addiction to prescription drugs that made her a murderer. District Attorney Joe Freeman Britt, who'd headed the prosecution at her trial, was not convinced.
She may look like a sweet little old grandmother, but she is a cold-blooded, deliberate murderess who horribly murdered 5 human beings over a 6-year period and did it with full knowledge of what she was doing.
During her 6 years on death row, Barfield made more than 20 appeals against her sentence. Each one was denied, and she seemed to accept the fact that she would become the first woman in the United States to die by lethal injection. All that stood between Barfield and death was North Carolina Governor James Hunt, who came under heavy pressure from both sides of the death penalty divide.
And I will hear from the victims and their victims' families just as much as those people who want clemency. Then after I've heard from everybody and studied any application I receive, then I'll make a decision promptly, and I will make it without any hesitation.
But Barfield's last hope failed. Her execution was set for the 2nd of November 1984. She chose to die by lethal injection rather than gas. During her last days, Barfield became almost philosophical about her impending fate.
So I only ask for, the strength for today. I don't really reach out and live way out away for a couple of weeks, I know it's coming. I'm just asking for strength whenever.
As the hour of Barfield's execution drew near, a large crowd of press and protesters gathered outside the prison. Velma Barfield was pronounced dead at 2:10 a.m. Unlike that of her victims, her death had been quick and painless. "14 years later, another murderer was led to the death chamber, the first woman to be executed in Texas since 1863. On the 13th of June 1983, the lifeless bodies of 26-year-old Jerry Dean and 32-year-old Deborah Thornton were discovered. They'd both been killed in a frenzied attack with a pickaxe, the head of which was still embedded in Deborah's chest. A month later, acting on a tip-off, police arrested and charged 23-year-old Carla Faye Tucker and 38-year-old Daniel Garrett. Prosecutor Joe Maglio was appalled by Tucker's callous attitude.
Nicest way I know how to put it is that the defendant got pleasure out of what she did. Well, the witness testified to the jury that it was sexual pleasure.
Tucker pleaded guilty and was sentenced to death in April 1984. Garrett also received the death sentence, but died from liver failure whilst in prison. Born and brought up in Houston, Carla Faye Tucker began taking drugs when she was just 7 years old. At 14, she became a prostitute, dropped out of school and began a downward spiral. At the time of the murders, Tucker and Garrett were trying to steal Jerry Dean's motorbike. The investigating officer, Detective Mosier, described the murders as extremely brutal.
It was probably one of the most heinous crimes that I remember in the history of the Houston Police Department.
Once Tucker had been sentenced and incarcerated, the appeals process started. It was to drag on for 14 years. While in prison, Tucker turned to Christianity.
Today we're going to have special prayer again for Carla.
Carla's going to have another miracle in her life, and we want to see her live to tell it.
But despite her contrite behavior, not everyone thought Tucker should be spared, including Detective Mosier.
Carla has admitted what she did. She knows the magnitude of the crime. She believes, I believe, that the punishment she received was a just punishment.
In December 1987, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a request to review the case. The then Texas Governor, George W. Bush, was asked for his opinion.
In our state of Texas, the Pardons and Parole Board decides whether someone gets executed or not. They can make a recommendation to me, and I can accept their recommendation.
In January 1998, the board turned down Tucker's appeal to commute her sentence to life.
I myself have absolute no quarrel with the decision to deny Ms. Tucker's requests on all fronts this morning.
Tucker's lawyer, David Botsford, said it was a sad day.
She's upbeat. She knows there's 4 or 5 legal balls in the air. Her faith in the Lord has not been disturbed one iota.
The appeals process had run its course.
The world, per se, may not believe I deserve forgiveness, but God says He's forgiven me because I did repent and I turned away from what I did and I gave my life to Him.
Her execution was set for the 3rd of February and attracted a stream of demonstrators opposed to capital punishment. Mingling with them outside the prison were more than 200 reporters. Some protesters felt her supporters were demanding special treatment.
Why should a woman receive any different treatment than a man? She has committed the same crime that men have committed, and she deserves the punishment that is the state law in Texas.
Tucker's final appeal for clemency was denied by the U.S. Supreme Court. Relatives of her victims were invited to witness the execution. At 6:30 p.m., Tucker was led into the execution chamber and strapped to a gurney. She apologized for what she'd done, and within minutes she was dead. An official announced her death to the crowd waiting outside.
Carla Faye Tucker has been executed by lethal injection for the crime of capital murder. She was pronounced dead at 6:45 p.m., 8 minutes after the lethal drugs were administered.
Tucker's supporters seemed relieved her long ordeal was at an end. Richard Thornton, the husband of one of Tucker's victims, had these words for the reporters.
She finally said my wife's name. Took her 15 years to do it. She said it on her deathbed because she knew if she did not say that, I know the Lord wouldn't take her in at all.
Tucker was buried 2 days later. Among those who attended the funeral was Detective Mosier, the man who'd arrested her for the murders so many years earlier. History is full of women who resorted to murder to suit their needs. Marguerite Farmy shot her husband to be free of his abuse. Ma Barker was the brains behind a gang of ruthless bank robbers and kidnappers that included her own sons. Velma Barfield may have looked like a sweet grandmother, but she poisoned 5 people, including her mother. And Carla Faye Tucker used a pickaxe to murder 2 people for nothing more than a motorcycle.